Hello my loves, welcome back to Carly's Closet, and today's video I am giving you tips on how to dress more vintage and classy, because those two words coincide with one another. And if you are a regular follower, subscriber of my content, then you know that I love to play with vintage clothes. I love to collect vintage items, and my overall aura is just very old-timey, vintage-esque. I have a natural old soul, and I just like classic old things, right? So could be something to do with the way that I grew up, to be honest. So anyways, I'm gonna give you some of my best tips on if you appreciate the vintage-esque look yourself and how you can achieve that. So let's go ahead and get into the tips. So the first tip I have for you is the obvious, and here comes my kitty cat. Come on Suri. And that's gonna be to shop at antique malls, duh, vintage shops, duh, and thrift stores, duh. Now, I hit up all three of these spots in just about every parish or county that I possibly can, and I do it routinely. Like, honestly, once a week at least I'm going to a thrift shop. So thrifting is honestly one of the best, most affordable places to find, very vintage-esque, old-timey things, but they are thrift shops, so you just kind of sometimes get people's secondhand items, and that doesn't mean you're always going to score vintage, right? There's a lot of obviously modernization in those thrift stores, and some of them even try to stay with what's trendy and like out there, modern dressing, but you'd be surprised, if you really rummage through a lot of those things, those items, you can even kind of take something more modern, excuse me, and kind of make it more vintage appropriate. So check the thrift stores, always. You're also almost guaranteed to score it at a really good deal. So I'm constantly browsing through the thrift shops, and obviously the antique malls and the vintage shops, those are gonna typically be a little bit higher priced, and they are gonna be more of a shopping experience. You can they kind of just have higher priced and like more valuable items, but it's always super fun to see what you can find, and at least you're always going to get something pretty much guaranteed to be from a certain era, and obviously priced at the appropriate price for that time era. So always be routinely checking those shops to obviously go for that vintage look, right? So moving on to the next tip is, this is probably going to be controversial, as it usually is, but that is a skill that I am so great at, being controversial, and that is, don't show too many body parts, and please for the life of me, ditch the raunchy bikinis, okay? I don't know who came up with this G-string, barely there, little bitty piece of fabric out to the beach, but let me tell you, that is not how the classic vintage women were dressing, okay? They were dressing a lot more modestly and a lot more appropriately for the beach. Most of the time, if not all the time, they were wearing the tankinis, which are like basically a shirt and a very modest bottom, or they were wearing one pieces, right? They were wearing very modest swimwear, maybe even covered up extra with a skirt, covered up maybe with a shawl, like all of this stuff they were going out in the sun and going to the beach in. They were not wearing all of this up your booty G-string, barely there kind of material where it's only covering your nipples and you still see your parts down there, okay? I don't know why we normalize this raunchy trashiness, but it's not a good look, okay? We got to ditch all that bikini trendy garbage and opt for the more classy, you know, one pieces and tankinis and burkinis at that. And you know, also what plays into that is, you know, just in general, not dressing like not showing too many body parts when you are dressing for day to day. Accentuate certain parts of your body and then cover the rest, right? Like, all of these girls are just walking around with their midriffs and their tummies showing all the time. And don't get me wrong, there is a classy way that you can do that. I think it definitely looks good on certain women, and of course in certain environments, right? I think it is classy if you wear like a cute little bralette and like maybe a long skirt and you have like your tummy showing, if that's your style. I think that that does look classy, but obviously maybe for a beach party or to go to, you know, have lunch on the beach, you know, something like that, but not like walking into a shopping mall. Like, there are, you know, appropriate settings for that kind of look, but just in general, you know, not showing all your body parts, you know, keeping it a mystery. Don't have your booty all hanging out. If you want to show one of your best assets on your then, you know, kind of play it up, make it, you know, accentuate it to make it look good and classy, and then cover the other parts up. We don't need to be showing, you know, our tummies all the time, every day, going to work, right? So keep it modest and ditch the bikinis, okay? Moving on to the next tip, how to dress vintage and classy. And that's gonna be, obviously you wanna always look for the detail in the clothes, the feminine touches, the silks, the satins, the laces, the velvet materials, the florals, right? Something, a common theme that I noticed amongst all the vintage antique items is there was a lot of character, and that's one of the reasons why I love so much collecting vintage items. And it's not just vintage clothes that I love to collect, but also vintage home decor, antique pieces for my home, right? But that's just a common thing amongst all of them, is that they have so much character, and you know, it's not become so plain Jane, boring, girl next door, something that everybody has. Like all of this, you know, this trendy Amazon IKEA look that everybody's trying to go for, have this minimalist living room space, and they all look the same, and that's just so not me. So, you know, definitely keep a good eye for the silks, the satins, the laces, the girliness, the embroideries, the velvets, and the flowers and the florals in your vintage items. It's all about the detail, okay? And wear pearls or diamonds, brooches on your tops and your dresses, and shoe clips. These are some accessories that are really gonna help pull your vintage-esque or vintage-inspired look together. I always have a pair of heels, pearls on me pretty much at any given time, and you can just incorporate pearls, dainty little pearls, into just about anything. Your earrings, you can wear clip-on earrings, your bracelets, little pearl rings, pearl watch, you know, little, like, just add in little touches of pearls in some of your accessories, and it'll instantly elevate you and instantly give you more of that elegance from the 50s, okay? So moving on to the next dressing tip, and that's gonna be think romance, think character, as I was just saying, think colors, okay? Think embroideries, think A-line dresses, modesty, right? You don't have to dress like any particular era. You can be inspired by a particular era, but kind of just play with colors, right? If we notice, you know, we look amongst the themes of all of the eras and generations back, you can see that like a certain era had a certain kind of color scheme, and then another era had a certain kind of structure in their clothes, and then another era had a lot of funky colors and character and just cool hippie vibes, right? Like I personally love certain things and looks about the 70s and the 60s, and I'll kind of grab inspiration from that era, but then kind of mix it and, you know, give it my own personal twist to make it more individualized to me and myself, and kind of mix it with something like more from the 50s or more from the 20s and 30s. Like, you know, the 20s and 30s was more ritzy. It had more of the bling. It was more dressy. Like, obviously I love that, but I also really love the funkiness and casualness and, you know, a little bit more funky colors and character from the 70s. I would consider my own haircut, which you can't see right now, but my haircut I would consider to be definitely inspired by the 70s. I mean, my whole look is just kind of pulled together from different eras of the past, and I just kind of make it, you know, individualized to me and what looks best for me, and that's how I like it. So find what works for you. Find eras that, you know, you feel fit with your, you know, your personality, and get inspired by different things and prints from those eras, and just kind of make it your own. Have fun with it. Ladies, for your shoe options, of course there are a ton, and definitely more than two, but I'm gonna give you the two vintage shoe options that I love the most, and that is one, kitten heels. Kitten heels are something that's going to be a lot more classier than these huge stilettos, these huge platform heels, and honestly they're a lot easier to walk in. And also another option would be Mary Janes. I think Mary Jane flats and loafers are so cute. They're so classy. They're timeless. They never go out of style, and they come in a ton of different colors. So you can, you know, if you want to dress something up, you go for the kitten heel, and if you want to kind of just be a little bit more casual, you opt for your Mary Jane flat or your loafers. So those are two vintage shoe options that I am constantly rotating between, and like I said, pull inspiration from different eras and see what looks good for you and your particular outfits. Next tip is to accessorize with vintage accessories to kind of make an outfit more vintage-esque. So you could take a very modern, classic, you know, maybe more neutral colored outfit, as I'm wearing today. I'm wearing just this kind of versatile, like, gym black dress, and I accessorized it with this little headscarf. And so as long as you have some accessories and you pull the, you know, the vibe from all of these different time eras, you can make just about anything to be vintage if you put your own touch to it. So think accessories, you know, collect accessories, all the accessories that you can. Like I was saying, shoe clips, you know, brooches, these head scarves, the neck scarves, like the silky neck scarves, clutches, okay, these vintage pearl clutches. I have actually a ton over here. I collect them, you know, when I see a good deal on one, I will collect them, and sometimes I just really use them as decor, honestly, but I love to have them, and especially for an elegant formal night out, they are a great option. So definitely with the accessories. Also, you could take a totally modern outfit, or just like a you know, a simple pair of jeans and maybe a cute black blouse, and then put some pretty little vintage gloves with it, right? You could do a funky vintage hat, right? I personally have such a huge obsession for vintage hats. I don't know, I just have this fixation about collecting vintage hats. I absolutely love a vintage hat, okay? And I think the pillbox hats are so freaking cute and so unique. Like, you never see anybody wearing that anymore. So I try to collect vintage hats, and I actually have a little hat haul, hat wall, excuse me, behind me over here. Let's see if I can show you guys. Oh, well, you can see it like behind me right here. And that's not even all of them. That's just a few of my vintage hats. But I just love vintage hats, and they come in so many different cool colors, shapes, fabrics. Oh, I am just like, I am in hat heaven when I go to any of the antique vintage shops. So I'm obsessed with the vintage hats, but you know, you can find your fixation of, you know, something. Don't be afraid to add it onto a more modern outfit, and that's how you're gonna really elevate it and make it to be more vintage inspired, if not a totally, you know, I bought this from, you know, the 1940s kind of dress, right? It just has to be more vintage inspired. This is another huge tip that I'm going to leave you off with, okay? This is not to get you to adapt the whole costumey vintage look. I am so not into that. I don't like the, you know, looking like a costume, caricature type of vintage look, which is something you often see a lot online. I don't personally like that because, you know, like I said, I just feel like it looks like a caricature, and it kind of looks theatrical, you know, like you're about to go perform on stage. You know, you're looking that way for a certain reason, like it's your costume. Okay, I don't know how else to say it, but I just don't really like that. It's just not as classy, and it's also not as individual, right? So yeah, they have shops like that. You know, you can find a lot of vintage shops like that that kind of help you look more like a caricature. But this is not the point of this video. I'm not into the costumey wear. I'm more into just dressing classy and overall having a very vintage-esque kind of elegance about yourself, okay? That's all I'm gonna say for this video today. If you guys like videos like this, definitely let me know down below. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Leave a recommendation for future videos if you have any, because I'm always open and love to hear your recommendations for my channel and helping this channel grow. And until the next video, I will talk to you guys soon. Love you.